Cloud computing is changing a lot of how things are done in business and in IT. We'll take a look in this video at some of the different service models, types of offerings, and ways of approaching business and computing in the cloud. Right now, there are three main service models described in cloud computing. You've probably heard of them. Infrastructure as a Service, IaaS, Platform as a Service, PaaS, and Software as a Service, SaaS, sometimes called SaaS. These are available from providers in various combinations or separately. There's also an idea of XaaS, or X as a Service, or sometimes X meaning just anything as a service. It's like that unknown variable. The idea being that anything that has been provided in the data center previously, people want to find a way to virtualize or put into the cloud. So anything as a service is growing, but it's definitely a little bit harder to define and might not yet be called a service model. Infrastructure as a Service is the bottom layer of the cloud computing model, focusing on the pure infrastructure used for computing. Infrastructure as a Service is the combination of things like physical server hardware, physical storage, the networking components, routers, cables, connectors, firewalls, power, racks to house this gear, physical security to control access physically to this gear, and cooling. In the infrastructure as a service model, it's the hosting provider or the cloud provider who owns the physical infrastructure, not you. And they offer it to you to host a platform and the applications that run on it. If you're purchasing infrastructure as a service, you're purchasing that infrastructure or use of that infrastructure to do with what you like on top of that. Infrastructure as a service can be used for a lot of different situations and has some advantages. To replace outdated in-house physical infrastructure, a warm or a cold standby site where you're building all of your standby process on top of that infrastructure, temporary needs, such as resources that need to be expanded for a particular event or a particular time frame, or to move into new geographic areas by locating some infrastructure in a faraway place where you don't have any physical presence, but you want to be closer to the customer. It also works well where you have limited predictability of the load that's going to hit your server infrastructure, because you can scale up and down your infrastructure a lot more quickly when it's part of an infrastructure service than when you're buying hardware to implement it yourself. It's also a way to use large amounts of computing power for a short period of time, or to purchase larger amounts of computing power during other people's slow periods, if you have low priority computing jobs to take care of, but that require a lot of power. Moving up, we get to Platform as a Service, or PaaS. Platform as a Server is a layer on top of the physical infrastructure. Most of the time, it refers to virtualization of the operating system and the operating system itself. In the Platform as a Service model, the hosting provider owns the platform and the underlying infrastructure, and you as a customer make use of it. It's similar to the infrastructure model, except it's the hosting provider that manages things like the installation of the operating system or the hypervisor. With infrastructure as a service, you're purchasing use of the raw infrastructure. With platform, you're purchasing use of, say, a Unix host or a Windows host that's already installed, although probably virtualized. Platform as a service enables some business scenarios, such as requiring temporary access to a physical infrastructure and operating system. Or perhaps you don't have a lot of in-house platform management skills, or your people who are skilled in that area are fully tasked. Or you're short on the experience on how to maintain a platform in the best possible way. Or you don't want to get caught into the licensing loop, because usually platforms include the licensing being owned by the platform provider. Although on occasion they may pass that cost back to you or ask you how you wish to license it. It can be used to streamline application development and testing. Some platforms include development tools and everything you need to get your services up and running. And easily having access to an infrastructure which allows you to run your own applications can be a business scenario in itself. This might include warm and hot standby sites where you're perhaps even replicating data to these VMs in the cloud so that they can come up very quickly should you ever need them for disaster recovery. Software as a service is the top layer of this cloud that we're looking at, which offers complete application to the cloud user. Examples of a software as a service: hosted email infrastructures. I think in some ways this was probably the first use of software as a service, was hosted email. Web applications, file sharing applications, music streaming application, and line of business applications. And I'm sure with a little bit of thought, you can think of brand names that fit each of these categories. In the software as a service model, the hosting provider provides access and maintenance to the application. You as a customer simply make use of it. Some software as a service is sold to individual users, such as an email application, and others are sold to an enterprise, such as an email application that comes with hundreds or thousands of mailboxes, but is completely hosted as a service by the provider. Business cases: anytime you want to avoid application and software maintenance or management tasks. Anytime you want to make sure you don't have outdated software on your in-house platform, or you have outdated software and you want to upgrade but you don't want to do it in-house. Lack of skills available to you for one reason or another to support or migrate existing applications. You want to focus on your business without focusing so much on IT. So in essence, you're in part purchasing IT expertise by using that service that's hosted elsewhere. You have to look at the cost of the software as a service versus the investment in IT assets and make a financial decision that way. It's also a great way to give a try or test out some hosted applications before committing whole hog or bringing them onto an on-premises solution. So there's a number of advantages to businesses as using software as a service when it's appropriate. So as an overview, you look at how these things are built on top of each other. The bottom of the stack is the infrastructure, and that's available as a service. You can purchase or lease or rent that infrastructure and build your own platforms on top of it. Or you can say, no, I want you to take care of the platform. I want to contract with you to have access to your platform as a service. And then you manage the applications and software on top of that. Or you can say, no, I want to have that software available as a service as well. I want you to provide everything to me from the software on down, and I'll just be a user. A number of different services available to you. You can choose the ones that best fit your business needs.